There we go. And all right, beautiful freight people, we're going to get started, but let me make sure we go live on YouTube. And of course, um, Zoom's giving me a hard time. So, folks, as you guys are trickling in, I knew this would happen if I tried to live stream. Give me a second to uh, make sure. People can be pretty upset if this isn't available live stream. And if it isn't, we will produce this um, as the,
I'll come back. We can do it again.
yeah, we'll have them back. Oh, I got a heart already. I love that. I love the attitudes. Love everybody coming in. We're going to have a big crowd today. Zoom is going to limit how many people are allowed to come in. If I see Kathy Manchesky's name, I haven't seen you in so long. Hello. I got distracted. I'm sorry. So Zoom's going to restrict how many people can actually come in. So we will produce this as a
Yeah,
video.
Kathy
It'll
raised her
be
hand. She's
on.
there.
Oh, yay! And so we will produce that video afterward. And I can't tell you why the settings in Zoom are giving me a hard time. It's Zoom, you guys. It's terrible. All right, let me share my screen really quick and just talk about a few things before we get started. Um, and as people trickle in as well. So I asked everyone to give us questions beforehand, and the questions were so well thought out. I was really impressed, actually. I know everybody's busy, and I was impressed that people found the time to think through what they wanted to hear from Michael. And it was just great. I just wanted you guys to know that. But there were a lot of questions, and I'm going to press Michael on this a little bit, but there were a lot of questions about what's the reasonableness of carrier vetting, and a lot of questions into the nitty gritty of operations, the nitty gritty of capacity versus carrier selection, and back to the reasonableness standard again. And I want to make sure we frame this interview with Michael accordingly, which is, he can't tell us what the reasonable standard is. No one can. But I am sharing my screen here for those for free. I created the COPRA standard. It's what I have interpreted as the industry standard in accordance with my experience. You can download it for free right here. So logisticsriskexpert.com. You can download it for free, read through all the educational material, and you can implement this and use this as a guide. It's not your end all be all, but it is a good resource for you to give you a stand. And look, that's me. And that was before I had a baby. So look how skinny I was. Oh, I miss those days. So in the standard as well, I gave you guys a example a carrier selection policy you can use as your framework to build your own, because it's really important that you have one in writing. Another resource for the industry standard is Carrier Sure, of course. We literally come out and tell you that the carriers do not meet the industry standard as defined by COBRA. And next steps, we give you all these steps you can do and how you can, if you still want to hire the carrier, here are all the things you can do and you can document. So I want you guys to know that those resources are available. All right, we are going to meet Michael Leizerman. And we're very excited to have Michael with us. We're very lucky because he is the most popular man in the industry right now. It is every lawyer's dream to even have a case that even goes anywhere near the Supreme Court. And his went to the Supreme Court and he won unanimously. That's amazing. So Michael's going to join us. He's been a friend of mine for a long time. He's also been on this on my Mad Gaines show that I did during COVID. If you guys want to find more information about him, he is the founder of the law firm for truck safety. This is his bread and butter. This is what he does in every day, in and out. And I think I saw somewhere that board certified for trucking accidents. He's written books on this. He has associations. So he's not new to this, you guys. And he has a beautiful wife who also is his partner in crime on all this as well. So there is a question and answer section. You guys are welcome to add some more questions. If we have time, we'll hit on them. But I did compile a good list. So, Michael, thank you for joining us. I'm really grateful that you did that because I'm sure you are requested to have like 20 webinars a day.
I've had many requests, and Cassandra, I'm especially happy to be here with you. It's fun to see there's defense lawyers on right now, who I know, hi Rob and some others, and I'm excited that there's industry people here. And I don't mind some heat. I try to think about this, and I follow the industry very closely. So on social media, I saw after the Montgomery decision all kinds of questions about will I be sued for this and what's the standard, and so I thought for a minute, like I try to put myself in the shoes of a broker and like trying to figure out what would you do. And I also would ask, like, for a minute, put yourselves in my shoes. So the kind of things that I see, cases that I've settled or I'm currently working on that involve brokers. There's one that was on CBS News that maybe some people saw, but imagine the broker, there's testimony that the owner of a truck company has a conditional rating and it's going into unsatisfactory, and the broker tells them to reform as another motor carrier, to become a chameleon, to reincarnate, and then they'll get the loads that way. And they do. Imagine a case where I laugh. All my cases are so tragic. There's a family killed. This is out west. Uh, Somebody who's a real estate investment person in Tacoma decides this looks like a good way to make money. I'm going to start a truck company. And they admit they have no idea what they're doing. They've never had a CDL, they've never driven a truck before. They just go buy a truck. They don't know anything about, they don't even know what the FMCSRs are. They keep saying the FRCS is in the deposition, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations. And I say, is this the application you gave to the driver you hired, who had a history of problems with drugs and being fired for drugs, but they didn't do the they didn't contact the prior employers. And he said, yeah, I just Googled it. I figured out to figure out how to run a truck company. I said, well, normally if you look at the regulations, it says there's certain questions you have to ask to qualify someone, 49 CFR 391, including like what kind of equipment have they driven before? Your application you downloaded asks what their hobbies are, but nothing about their driving history. I said, oh, I just downloaded that online. Um, the, I have case after case with stolen authority, with no insurance, I've had 3 or 4 cases with the authority literally duct taped on the side. And many of these, I'd say a quarter of the cases I have, um, maybe more than that, a third, wouldn't even be a case if somebody at the receiving end, whether it's at the broker's warehouse or the shipper's warehouse, if they would just look at the name on the truck, and I know you're a big proponent of this, Cassandra, if they just
Mhm.
look at the name on the truck and see doesn't match the bill of lading or the freight documents, because so often it doesn't. Most of my cases involve a new entrant, whether that's because it's a chameleon carrier or they're inexperienced, and the broker doesn't do any looking whatsoever. So I know we could spend some time talking about, well, what about this? What if someone had a out of service rate or a CSA number that 18 months before exceeded the threshold, but since 17 months before it no longer has, and they didn't have any other problems. If it's that kind of nitty gritty, um, I don't think you have to worry. Will there be some plaintiff's lawyer who maybe doesn't know what they're doing, who isn't board certified in truck accident law, who could sue a broker just because they can sue a broker? Yeah, that probably will happen. Um, I would say just like most brokers out there are trying to do a good job, they're subscribing to Carrier Assure or other subscription services. They're trying to do the right thing. Most truck drivers are trying to be safe and get home to their family. Um, Most lawyers are trying to do the right thing and find the cases that are good cases, because I don't want to put sometimes three to $500,000 into a case if I don't think it's going to be a winner. But there are the outliers, in every industry. Lawyers who might bring a case when they shouldn't, truck drivers who shouldn't be on the road, and motor carriers and brokers who just aren't doing anything. So the beauty about Montgomery was for so long, and I have a lot of case against C.H. Robinson, they're the largest freight broker. For so long, they said, essentially, we don't have to do anything. We can check for authority, insurance, and make sure you're not unsatisfactory. Um, and it's up to the government. This is not our job. This is for the government to give authority, and we can hire anyone with authority as long as they've not been given unsatisfactory. And what was very clear from the bench and from the Montgomery opinion, and in Justice Kavanaugh's concurring opinion, where he says that truck safety is a matter of life and death. And yes, you do have to look. So the legal standard is be reasonably careful, right? That's negligence law, and there's nothing that's going to say 17 months is okay, 18 months is not, or anything that specific. Just like there's no law out there that says, let's say, a medical malpractice case, there's no law that says a doctor can't cut off the wrong leg if they're doing an amputation. That's kind of common sense, right? You can't encapsulate every situation out there. Like, is that reasonably careful? So because of that, doctors, believe it or not, if you know this, they actually will label, because it's happened sometimes, you cut off the wrong leg. You'll label which leg is being amputated, like in permanent marker, to make sure they do the right one. It's a horrible analogy, uh, I think it holds up because you can't encapsulate every single thing. There's not going to be a law that says out of service rate this much. Uh, it's common sense. And so when I take a case, I'm going to look at it. Sean Montgomery. There's a lot of questions about Sean Montgomery in his case. I didn't realize this when I gave that example. I really didn't. But he has an amputated leg above the knee. Wasn't thinking about that. So that case, what's that about? Well, the motor carrier, first of all, the truck driver is a Cuban national. I don't know if we know where he is, didn't speak English. I don't know if he did sufficiently enough to understand roadsides or not. Um, and that truck company, first of all, Caribe 1 and Caribe 2, anytime I see like a different number, that's in of itself isn't negligent, but it makes me want to look a little further. The broker doesn't, in my opinion, do any vetting, just see if they have insurance and operating authority. Their out of service rate was 45% for truck for their vehicles, 11%, over 11% for their drivers, so over twice the national average. None of that was ever checked. On and on and on. So these are the kind of cases I see where it's not a close call to me. I don't want to take a case and put a lot of time and money into it if I don't think I can win it. So I want to see, does it pass the gut check? Do I say, if it was Cassandra and Michael's broker, we decide to form a broker company tomorrow, would I say it's a close call, or would I say no way in heck, not putting that carrier on the road?
That was a dynamite introduction. Dynamite. And I think that you have addressed so many things that everyone's thinking in this group. Do you think that now that the Montgomery decision, the dust is settled, do you think the roads are going to be safer with this decision?
I sure hope so. I sure believe so. Um, it actually afterwards was, there was a lot of just built up pressure and stress. The U.S. Supreme Court, wow, like being there and sitting like 10 feet from Justice Barrett and Justice Kavanaugh, and the others were down the row, and Rena was there. I do have to give credit to my wife and law partner, Rena, who is amazing and did a lot of work on this case. So to be there, hear the arguments, to hear the justices talk about these things that you talk about on your podcast, and it's part of my everyday job. But to hear them talking about, it was really fascinating. Justice Kavanaugh asking questions that went beyond what we were arguing, but he's asking C.H. Robinson, well, don't you get a MVR of the driver? Like, well, no, the broker doesn't do that. And Justice Kavanaugh saying, well, why not? Um, that's a pretty good question. And he wrote an opinion that was sympathetic to the industry, talking about costs and being aware of that. But why can't we do these things? There's a lot of bad drivers out there. Why can't we check on them? So I think the roads are going to be safer. I'm so happy that C.H. Robinson already changed its policies, no more conditional rated carriers. It's already put out, you have to requalify many of the carriers that were out there. We'll see how that how that goes, but just the discussions that are going on. I actually sat down and as I was thinking about it, I started crying. I realized that lives literally will be saved. We've saved people's lives because of this decision. Congress and the FMCSA for decades, I've been going there. I've been talking about safety changes, and there's some probably that some of us agree on and some that we don't, but it hasn't resulted in really anything. I think the biggest impact on truck safety in decades is this Montgomery decision, and it's not just my opinion on that. That I'm hearing that from a lot of people.
That's what I'm hearing too. And I can see the effect already. It's interesting because the brokers and the shippers feel that the burden has been shifted to them, um, to make the roads safe, in lack of better words. And they're very angry at the government. They're very angry with the FMCSA. They feel that the FMCSA should be the ones to have that burden, not brokers and shippers. What are your thoughts when you hear that kind of argument?
I mean, I think of two things. First, with my trial lawyer hat, I think you're gonna. I've been there before. I have the only punitive damages verdict in a broker case. It's in like 2011 in Oregon, the Linhart case, and so I'm used to these trials. And with my trial lawyer hat on, I'm thinking, really, please argue that. For the defense to go in and say, well, we just, especially in conservative parts of this country, we're relying on the federal government. Just rely on the federal government. They know what's best for us. That
Mm.
that's not a great argument to a jury. And so no, the Supreme Court has just taken that argument away, in my opinion. They've said no, it's not enough um, to just say the government. We know the government can't do it. They can't uh,
Do
vet
anything.
these carriers. As a matter of fact, it wasn't even contemplated. When you look at deregulation, the whole idea was that insurance minimums would be high enough, and they haven't been changed in almost half a century, that the insurance companies would do vetting. Obviously, there weren't many brokers around back then, but the idea is that the marketplace, and that includes insurance, and now that includes brokers, um, will have an incentive to be safe. So I've got several cases where the broker knows in their computer it shows there's a chameleon carrier, and the federal government doesn't. So many times brokers are in a better position to know about the safety. Um, they're the ones that are interacting every week, sometimes scheduling loads. They're the ones that know about capacity. And how come you just gave 1,800 loads to a company that lists two power units and you gave them 1,800 loads this past year? Brokers are in the position to be able to see that and ask questions that the government just can't. So, I am sympathetic. I see a question here, Amanda Miller, like, how long before the FMCSA catches up and provides current safety data? Well, yeah, I don't know what the heck went on with going from SMS to Modus
Oh,
and
that was terrible. Oof.
yeah, like why we can't do better than that. But your carrier sure is still out there and all your
Yep.
competitors. Like that information, that is curious to me, like with the change over to Modus, is that are you still able to get
Yep.
carriers
There's
the
just
data they need?
they're having a difficult time giving data to third party companies, but everybody's getting it. And the industry standard is the majority of sophisticated brokers and shippers don't solely rely on FMCSA websites anyhow. They rely on third party platforms.
Absolutely.
Many of
Um,
them are out there.
and many of them, like I want to find that out as a plaintiff's lawyer. What services are they subscribing to? And then when I find out they subscribe, but they use it selectively, um, or they care more about, here's like I'm happy to share this information because I would love everyone out there to put me out of business. I would love, I mean this. My job is usually once a month, sometimes more frequently than that, to sit at usually a dining table with maybe it's a young woman whose mother and father and sister have just been killed and she doesn't know what to do, or it's a mother whose son was just killed and like their life is feels like it's over. Um, I sit with people that, I see the worst of the worst, but uh, lots of death cases. And when it's not death, plenty of people that are quadriplegic and like their freedom has been taken. Their life is changed. And I would, I try to put myself in that position, and think, how can we stop this? Like I say, I don't know if it's a combination of autonomous trucks. I don't think we're quite there, but certainly some current safety technology and some better vetting from brokers and some better due diligence with some of the worst of the motor carriers. We do not accept in the airline industry any deaths, any crashes. There's a crash, there's huge investigations, right? But we have 100,000 injuries, 5,000 deaths. Like it, there's got to be all around. Everyone has to pitch in. The human cost is too much, and this affects truck drivers. So people might not realize, like Sean Montgomery is a professional truck driver who's on the road more than semi truck drivers, and other truck drivers. But he was a semi truck driver. He was stopped on the side of the road for a safety check. He had heard some equipment. He had stopped to make sure it was safe. And this other driver runs off the road, um, and hits him and amputates his leg. Um, I have other cases I've worked on, truck drivers of many years, safe drivers, just stopped in traffic, which happens all the time on the interstates, and another tractor trailer with taped on authority, that was stolen and no insurance, runs him in his tanker
Mm.
truck and kills him. Um, no insurance. Who's the, broker that hired that company? I like that I'm seeing more and more industry discussions that really get to the heart of the problem. So again, we cut out a lot of deaths and suffering for people. If we just checked the cab when it drove in, we would cut out a lot. I was happy to see, I think it was in Transport Topics in the last week about ghost carriers, which I see stolen carriers a lot. And that was great to see the industry talking about this, someone that comes in and basically buys out someone else's authority, and
Hmm.
look out for that because people are sneaking in. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
uh,
terrifying.
yeah,
It's actually one of the most frustrating things for brokers and shippers right now because it's hard to detect. It's very frustrating. I think that um, all these things, all these points you're making are points we've talked about for a long time. I want to illuminate that there are brokers and shippers. The majority of brokers and shippers out there and freight forwarders hiring carriers are doing such a great job vetting carriers. And it's funny because often they're the ones that are most worried about liability in this decision. And they're the ones that are questioning themselves the most. And I keep telling them, I'm like, you guys are doing a great job.
hmm,
I and for those of you who don't know, I do work with Michael. I am an expert witness in the industry on what the industry standards are for selecting a carrier. And I feel sometimes when I see Michael's cases and his partner's cases, um, I feel like I'm often telling him, "Hey, just so you know, that this is not how a reasonable broker acts." Like I feel like I'm saying that a lot. And hey, this is not how a reasonable shipper acts. And there's so many out there who are doing a great job, and most just need to keep doing what they're doing. Um, but I, I think there are ones out there that have some work to do too. I know that I received this question a lot. Is there anything that's like a easy no brainer when you open up a case and you see what a broker's done or a shipper that you're like, mm-mm, I'm not, it's not black and white, but it's a huge red flag that's going to make you dig a little bit deeper into the file
yeah,
besides conditional carriers. Keep telling people about conditional carriers. No one listens.
yeah. Conditional carriers. So a few of the things I look at right away, I get a case, and I don't sue a broker automatically. I have plenty of truck cases where I don't sue the broker or the shipper. But I look, what's the date of the motor carrier's authority, right? So is it within, are they new entrant carrier? So within 18 months, and you know, have they had their safety audit within the 12 months? What's a little hard to see on first blush, um, but I'll want to find out, but the broker would know, is um, were they under contract? This happens a lot within a week, many times within a day, 2, 3 days of getting their motor carrier authority. They're under contract with the broker. So I want to see how long have they been around? Were they hired immediately? You know, and I understand many times I'll get the argument, well, how do motor carriers get experience if
Mm,
you
I
know,
hate that statement, just so you
yeah.
know.
Well,
I,
what do
I
you tell
rant and
people?
rant because I
Rant for a
tell
minute.
and everyone here, y'all know what I usually say, which is because years, months of authority is the thing that I tell people most. That's your first touch point that you need to think about. But how do the new carriers get experience, Cassandra? And I always tell them, run local, run in your state of Georgia, join the Trucking Georgia Association, run with local Georgia shippers. We're not asking for a long period of time. I think that I put in the CAVRA standard that for dry van shipments going across the country, it's generally about 90 days of authority. It could be more depending on the freight, depending on more circumstances. But guys, it's not a long time. But I don't want to see my family driving next to an 80,000 pound truck where the guy's just got his authority a week later. That's crazy. And by the way, I want to make it one point. When Michael says he sees this a lot, the carrier under contract after a week, he means in his cases. He doesn't mean across the industry. I don't want people to start thinking that happens a lot and then get all excited.
Yeah, I'll say it again. I see the worst of the worst.
Mhm.
That's the nature of my law firm. I see some of the worst carriers and you know, the brokers. So your question is, what do I look for? I look for, is it a new entrant? Is it obviously a chameleon carrier? You know,
Mhm.
these days, I have access to all the things you do that the brokers do. Um, Look at the software, run the VIN number, the plate number, like look and see. It's not that hard to see when there's like a super ego kind of uh, situation out there. To pick on one that's been in the news. So I'm going to look at that. I'm going to look at out of service rates. I'm going to look at the things um, because if I have to go in front of a jury, this reasonable care standard um, means it's got to make common sense to a jury. And it can't be something that, like, oh, if you would have taken 30 hours of deep digging, you would have come to the conclusion this wasn't a safe carrier. I'm not going to win with that. Um, the broker will win if if that's my argument. But if I can say, I can look this up in 90 seconds, and anyone who's younger than me can look it up in 30 seconds. Actually, I can do it in under 30 seconds because it's on, saved on my browser on my computer. But they could just looked up the out of service rate, and when you have 45% out of service rate, then I'm thinking, well, I at least want to ask, did you inquire about that? Why that out of service rate? I mean, if I'm a broker, I'm just not going to hire that carrier. But so those are just some of the quick things I'm looking at. Have there been fines recently? Just the publicly available data. What were the fines for? So those are some of the quick things that I'm going to want to look at. And
Yeah.
really, what it comes down to is, would this driver and company have been on the road if the broker hadn't paid them to be on the road? Um,
Mm.
because there's some horrible carriers out there that I see,
Mhm.
and I see where other carriers won't give them loads, but then they go to some other carriers who do. Um, I get into cases, and when I do my homework, I start to see things like I'll subpoena the underwriting file, and I'll see that this company this motor carrier's had half a dozen denials of insurance because right in the file will say suspected chameleon carrier, um, but the broker hasn't even looked. The
Mhm.
other thing I look at that's just the quick publicly available information is many of my cases I'll look and I'll see, let's say there's a motor carrier that's been around 3 years, but it's had 15 involuntary revocations. Um, and my first thought, and it's usually the case, is they're not paying their insurance premiums and it continues to
Yeah.
get canceled and reinstatement, canceled, reinstated. And if they can't pay their insurance premiums, they're probably not, not always, but probably not doing their preventative maintenance or really don't have the assets to safely run a motor carrier. There's not a God-given right to own a truck company. I think that partly these, I don't know, we had the movies in the 70s and the 80s. That's when I was growing up, the 70s, the Smoking the Bandits and those things. We wouldn't just say, well, like anyone that wants to open a truck company or anyone that wants to open an airline should be able to open an airline, right? No, this is a business where we want people who understand. And I'm not against the small carrier. There's owner operators who care a lot and run safe
Hmm.
operations. There's big carriers who care a lot and run safe operations. There's big carriers that don't.
Hmm.
But yeah, again, I don't mean to go on this rant, but we don't just give people licenses to start an airline. And I think we have to do some vetting. And I see in the questions people that are saying, but well, why isn't it the government? Why isn't the government? Well, first of all, it's not. We've been fighting this for decades, and the U.S. Supreme Court has now said, no, it's not unreasonable for you to follow negligence law like everyone else. Just do what's reasonably careful. And if you sit and do any kind of due diligence and come up with systems that you can show here's what I've done, I'm not going to take your case. And if a bad lawyer takes the case against you, you're going to be able to win. You're going to be able to get it thrown out on summary judgment or win with the jury. So this is like the case I'm taking. I'm not just quibbling about something from 2 years ago. So I think everyone has to figure out for themselves. I think if I were a broker, if I wanted to start a broker company, I would call you, Cassandra, and say, as much as I know about this, I want your help. And I mean, we start with some of the standards that you've been putting out there.
Yeah. I see some really good questions coming in. Um, I want to throw a doozy at you really quick.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Okay.
it's like a tough question. Maybe you don't because you speak a lot on this, and I'm sure you've had some crowds that push back, and I'm sure you've had crowds that follow every word you say. But do you believe that some of these large brokerages or some of the large companies are investing in a lot of AI, where they collect a ton of data, analytics, and they're auto assigning carriers to shippers on their platforms? They're doing really, really intense things. Is a plaintiff attorney, if one of those brokers or companies got involved in an accident lawsuit, um, do you feel like they're held to a higher standard because they have all those analytics and AI? And does it change your approach or thoughts about the carrier, about the broker?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm all for AI if it helps us make the road safer. I think it can help us as long as we're using it to help and that human beings are involved. At least at this point, I think we still need human beings involved from what
I
I've
do too.
seen. Um, and there's different ways to use AI. So I see some of the software that's out there um, that now will run AI on a carrier. You just put a USDOT number in, and it does not a full onboarding. I wouldn't rely on it for onboarding, but it does a pretty good job of searching data. Like there's certain things that AI does well. So here's the trucks they have. Here's the VIN numbers. Um, oh wow, this has been associated with these other three companies that have a similar address. I think AI can help detect chameleon carriers and just look at all the data that's out there. Um, that's a great use for it. Separate from that are brokers who are using AI to onboard companies without doing vetting, just to onboard them and get them on the road immediately. And so what I've seen is the way that AI has been used is let's check. Do you have DOT authority? Did you send us your copy of insurance? Not even checking to see if this truck is on the insurance or if the insurance is showing the DOT showing one truck, but again, they're giving them 100 loads a week. Um, I don't see the AI up until Montgomery, and I'm hoping this changed. I don't think that some of the brokers, the ones that some of them didn't want to know. They wanted to use the AI to help increase capacity
Yep.
without doing any vetting. I think if you use AI to help with the vetting and do some little bit of human looking and follow up, then you're protecting yourself. So
Do
the
you
billions of dollars that the big ones are spending, um, I would love to see some of that put, and supposedly it's going to be done now, put into the safety vetting, not just the logistics. The logistics stuff is great, get us our goods quicker and track it, and I love all that. That's American ingenuity. But along with that, let's not kill people on the as we're doing it.
yeah, do all these great things to help with your operations. We're hoping you put all that good AI and all that great data to work when vetting carriers too. Do you feel the Supreme Court decision when you read it over, when you read the words written about your case, like that's just so amazing. And by the way, it was so amazing that the Supreme Court even cared about our industry. I was like,
Yeah.
wow. Um,
Well, I've got to say, and I have a picture on my phone. I could see if I can pull it up. But what was very interesting about this was that uh, Chris Ugarte is general counsel for C.H. Robinson, and he and I have, as you can imagine, some disagreements about some things. But I also want to say, here's a picture of Chris and me on the Supreme Court steps. Um,
wow. Wow.
he's a gentleman. I would try to strive to be the same. And we actually both agreed um, to request cert, which means we both agreed to say to the Supreme Court, we think this is an issue that needs to be decided. Like, I sure hope I win. He sure hoped he won, but this needs to be decided because at that point there were like 7 states in the country where broker cases were preempted, and 6 or 7, I have to go back and count where they weren't. Um, and everywhere else was kind of the Wild West. And we said, look, we just need some certainty on this. And now we have some certainty.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
for
think that
sure.
that's and now we have these conversations, which I'm enjoying.
Do you feel that the language in the decision um, made gave an impression that human the human intervention, human aspect of carrier vetting is part of carrier vetting versus the automation, if that makes sense?
Ask it again. I want to make sure I understand your question.
Do you think that the Supreme Court leaned into there is a human part of carrier vetting? There's a part where you do pick up the phone and ask questions
Yeah,
versus the automation of carrier vetting.
yeah,
And
for
by
sure.
the way, I mainly ask this because we have a lot of small brokerages in our industry that build relationships with carriers, and they do pick up the phone and they are asking the questions. And I want them to feel a little confident with your answer, or not confident. Maybe you're like, no.
No, I'm what else can you do as a broker? You'd have to be reasonably careful. And I think as soon as you're making contact and asking questions, you're doing beyond what the biggest uh, brokers were doing. So you can, as soon as you can say, here's our processes, and you mean it. It's not a lawyer that's just um, checking boxes. Like you can show, yeah, we sat down. What more do you want from us? Like, this is what we do. We care about safety, and here's what we've tried to do to vet the best we can save carriers. When you can show that, um, you're going to win your case. I'm not going to bring my suit against you, or I'm going to dismiss it. I think that the Supreme Court decision was very interesting because on one hand, you have Justice Barrett's opinion, which is very technical. It was about the construction of a statute and about 5 words with respect to
Mhm.
motor vehicles. Um, but then you have Justice Kavanaugh's concurring opinion, where he's saying things like truck safety is a matter of life and death, and the negligent hiring tort exists to keep unsafe trucks and unsafe drivers off America's highways. So there definitely was a recognition in the Supreme Court discussion of and I the Supreme Court is not immune from what's going on in the culture in the society, and I think as we see certainly the current administration clamping down on non-domicile drivers, that was part of the literal conversation Justice Kavanaugh had with the different lawyers arguing. Um, I think that all that plays a part. But your question is to the small broker. Um, I can't tell you do this, 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 and you're 100% protected, but I can tell you that I'm not going to take that case, and you're probably going to win it. So the reasonable care is check with yourself. Like, have you done? Do you subscribe to the software? Do you actually use it? Have you ever talked to these people? Could it be that this is someone who was a real estate investment person who knows nothing about trucking, which if anyone had had a 90-second conversation with them and they said, well, I follow those FRCSAs, that you might say, what? What was that? Are you talking about the federal motor care safety rate? Yeah, that you might actually just follow up and try to see like, could you send me your policies and your safety manual? Oh, you don't have a safety manual? How long have you been doing this? Oh, just for a week? Um, maybe we need to look at this more closely versus the cases I see, which is how many loads can we get you? And knowing that those carriers are the ones that they're going to be able to make a bigger margin on. So, it also doesn't look good when there's investigations and time and again, and these are many times the larger brokers, but when you really dig into it, um, you'll see margins of like 40%. I know that's not
Mhm.
standard, but that's
Mhm.
what you find when you're going in and giving these loads to just the lowest bidder. And that's why it was very interesting that the American Truckers United filed a friend of the court brief, an amicus brief on our side. No carriers supported C.H. Robinson's side. They, in their
Interesting.
brief, they talked about a race to the bottom and that, we want brokers to have some accountability. So that was really fascinating to me.
Um, God, I have so many questions, but we should shift to insurance. There were a lot of questions that came through about insurance. And the first question is generally, what impact on insurance industry do you foresee and are you currently seeing? Because I know our industries were, I mean, immediately insurance brokers were going back to brokers and telling them, hey, remember how we gave you a quote for your premium coming up? We're going to take that quote back because the underwriters want to reassess everything.
Yeah, I can't answer for the insurance industry. It's very interesting to me. There's actually no new law in effect, right? Like
I
negligence
thought the
law,
same thing, so I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but it
negligence
is.
law has always been there. And at least in the Ninth Circuit, which is a lot of big states, California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Idaho, that's been the settled law since our case, the Miller case there in 2019 or 2020. Um, so at least since then, um, I would I find it hard to believe that the insurance industry wasn't writing for the risk. But I mean, I don't know what to say about that. I know that there's a concern. Uh, all right, what's this going to do for premiums? Uh, we'll have to see how that washes out. I think now I've seen you and I were talking about this offline. Um, I've actually seen it backfire. I've seen brokers and carriers who have gotten advice to reduce their insurance coverage thinking something like this. Like we used to have $5 million coverage, but we reduced it to $1 million because if we get sued, then we'll only have to pay the lawyer or the greedy lawyer will take
Mhm.
$1 million because that's all the insurance that's there. That's irrational to me. That doesn't make sense. You want to get the coverage that you can afford to protect yourself. Um, you know, none of us like paying insurance premiums. I pay a lot of money in my life for insurance premiums for malpractice insurance and car and auto. I keep huge policy limits, and I pay a lot of money for it, but I sleep well at night. And heaven forbid, my wife or I ever hurt somebody, um, killed somebody, like I want to know there's coverage there to pay for it. So it doesn't work just to say reduce your coverage. Maybe there are some lawyers out there who don't want to work and will take whatever the policy limits are. Not me. Um, I've had many carriers and brokers who have paid money out of their pocket because they didn't have enough insurance. So figure out. Now, it doesn't mean I know not every carrier, some of them out there have $200 million coverage. I'm not saying everyone has to go out and do that. Um, if you can, great. Um, but $1 million coverage doesn't cut it. Someone's paralyzed and I'm going to have a life care plan to take care of them that's going to be over $10 million. So see what premiums you can afford in your business and get as much coverage as you can. That's how I run my business and life.
I do think it's interesting that it's still industry standard. This isn't the law, but it's industry standard that a trucking company that a broker or shipper hires has a minimum of 1 million in auto coverage. Um, and 1 million these days
It's so
doesn't cover
inadequate.
anything.
Doesn't cover anything. And I get truck drivers who will say, people like Sean Montgomery and others like, um, I'm paralyzed. I've had my legs amputated. Like, are you kidding me? I'm a safe driver. How come they isn't someone responsible? Um, so I personally would like to see the insurance minimums raised. I think that any broker should probably be in favor of that. I know that gets us on another topic, but
Hmm.
that helps brokers because the carrier would have the underlying higher insurance. And I think also that maybe we would stop getting what I see 90% of the time is someone that went online and again, we could start Cassandra and Michael's trucking. We could get authority, and insurance by tomorrow, not today. And no one would ever interview us. No one would know anything about us. Um, and we'd have insurance coverage. That's crazy. Like
It is crazy.
I don't understand it.
It's a low bar to enter into our industry. I recently spoke with some folks who have a lot of influence in their industry, and they were very worried about the impact on the small carrier after the Montgomery decision. They were worried that capacity is going to start to shift to the larger carriers. So many things about to say about that topic, and capacity is going to start to shift to large brokers as well. I tried to, well, actually, before I give my opinion, what are your thoughts about that?
It's so interesting. And I'm so curious who this anonymous attendee is who keeps questioning us and saying the minimum requirement's actually $750,000, which we know that's not what
Yeah,
Cassandra said.
I
Cassandra said the
specifically
industry
said
standard was a
not
million,
legal.
which I caught. Yeah, which is what we see mostly, but certainly we see the minimum sometimes the 750. But affecting small the small carrier versus the large carrier, the small broker versus the large broker. Um, some of it, like I'm not an economist. Like I don't know. I know I get a case and I represent my client the best I can. And I've seen unsafe big carriers and unsafe little carriers. I've seen safe big carriers and safe little carriers. Um, I do think that there's some like economy of scale, right? If you have more trucks and you have subscription services and you have maintenance, like it's easier to make money that way than if you just have one truck. Now so some owner operators do it, they're selective. they're selective in what loads they're taking, and they're probably not, if they're successful, going to some of these biggest brokers to get their business. They probably have contracts where they have relationships, and have dedicated halls. And um, so, I mean, who is it that these small carriers were putting out of business? What the other thing that I'm seeing more and more of, and I'm not anti-immigration. I actually believe strongly this country was built on immigrants, and I have some pretty strong feelings about that. And still, there's no question that in the cases I see, again, the worst of the worst, um, probably half my cases, I haven't tried to count them, but that sounds about right, um, are companies, are overseas companies where loads are being dispatched, assigned and dispatched, um, from Lithuania, Uzbekistan, Serbia, on and on. I
Yep,
can give you
we know
country
this
after country,
well.
which is, so what companies are we putting out of business? Like, think that I think that more companies should be put out of business. There should be the corporate death sentence. Like, um, at some point, I'll give you an example, a case I have right now where the NTSB did an investigation and found that in a company, um, the owner, and this is currently in litigation, there's testimony from people that the owner said they actually advertised like, team pay for solo drivers, and that, in this crash where several people were killed, um, it was listed in the logbooks that there had been a co-driver, and the driver said, "Oh, I dropped him off at the rest stop like an hour back, or at the truck stop." Um, we got a call from the driver, who said, the co-driver, who said, "I wasn't the co-driver. I hadn't worked there in 3 months." As
Mm,
a matter of fact, the owner of the company had said, or other people at the company, there's some dispute over who said it, but I think there's evidence that the owner knew, um, that if you're ever over your hours of service, you just call him and he would add a phantom driver so you could double the hours you could drive. And this wasn't just in our case.
wow.
The NTSB investigated and found several other people who are saying this. These are loads who that are, being the logs are being falsified in Lithuania. And then I'm trying to do depositions of people in Lithuania, and they're blocking me. A company like that should be put out of business. They still have like 250 to 300 trucks on the road, and they're still operating. That's insane to me. Um,
Hmm.
so, so I think good carriers, good brokers, like, would want some of these drivers and companies off the road. It's unfair competition. How do you compete with that when they seemingly don't care?
Yeah. I always say to everybody, and at the bottom of the screen, there's this little button where you can react. And you guys can click on one of the reactions if this resonates with you. But I always say when people are like, what about we're going to lose all this capacity? I always say, um, not all capacity is good capacity. A broker's job is to find good capacity. Hmm.
Yeah,
And that's what makes a broker so valuable to shippers. But that we don't want all those carriers on the road to still be running on the road. There's some of them who just shouldn't be, or should be supervised and maybe running under a proper trucking company that's going to oversee them as an owner operator. But not all capacity is good capacity.
yeah, I think for sure.
We have 5 minutes left. I haven't had a chance to really go through the questions, but I
I've been
think
reading
that
them. There's a lot of very specific ones, and we could be here all day
all day.
or all week. Some of them are just like, well, we just don't have enough information. And again, I understand
There's
that
lots of information, you guys.
there's a lot
They
of
know, they know,
information.
they
Yeah.
know.
There's questions about, isn't it, how many carriers are unrated? And it's still, I think the latest figure that I think that everyone agrees on is around 94%. Like, it's clearly the vast
Yeah.
majority, somewhere between 90 to 95%, are
We
unrated.
talked, I talked to the community, the brokerage community and the shipper community a lot about, hey, if the decision goes the other way and for a preemption does provide this shield for brokers, I still believe in my heart of heart that so many brokers would still vet carriers exactly how they're vetting carriers today. And it's because a lot of that data does correlate, or absolutely correlates, with how the carrier is going to perform for you and for your shipper. Even if you didn't care about safety, you push that aside and you care about the goods getting there without being damaged and the carrier doing a great job. All that data that the FMCSA gives us, all those vetting standards, they still, I still believe that they would exist for many brokerages. So when they go in, when people say stuff about, oh, 90% of carriers are unrated, I'm like, none of us are going to even rely on the really ratings anyhow.
Yeah.
So I could
Well,
go
you
on and
make a
on
good
about that.
point that I hope people do this for the right reason. You want a safe world and person of integrity, a company of integrity, and even from purely selfish motives. Like, I mean, I follow the industry closer than most lawyers do. And what's as big, if not a bigger issue to most brokers than Montgomery? Cargo theft, right? So
Yeah,
who's going to be more likely the thief? And we're seeing that recently with multi-million dollar um, theft, and some of the companies I see, actually the red flags include thefts, the complaints of theft, but the broker keeps using them. That just doesn't make sense to me. So it's gonna be very curious to see, after Montgomery, one of the deputy administrators of the FMCSA, Jesse Ellison, said that and I'll be curious to see if this is actually picked up, uh, said that broker activity is now considered part of a motor vehicle, and that is within our purview. Will there be more? Now, I don't know if the FMCSA is that's a deputy
interesting.
administrator. Very interesting. Like, are they going to start looking to brokers? And then, we talked about some of C.H. Robinson's responses and some of the safety things that I sure hope they, I think not hiring conditional carrier is great when they say we're now going to require, I think, 7 days of activity instead of hiring someone a day after they get authority. I don't know that
It's unreal.
that makes a whole lot of difference, but I hope that there's continued uh, attempts to increase safety. It was very interesting. Dave Bozeman, the CEO of C.H. Robinson, said after Montgomery that shippers are now going to have to start looking, and vetting standards for brokers will rise as a result. So
Yeah,
um, so everyone's in it together, right? Like
yeah.
shippers should be reasonable. Now, if they hire a broker to do the vetting, great. They usually have in their contract that there's indemnification and let the broker do their job. If the shipper is giving loads at their warehouse, do some simple things. Look on the truck and see if it's the right name. You'll save yourself a lot
Hmm.
of grief. Um,
Hmm.
I get the case I'm seeing, I've got stolen authorities, stolen trailers, stolen trucks. These are things that with modern technology can be avoided.
Hmm. We are so fortunate to have you. Um, very, very impressive. You are doing what God put you on this earth to do. I look forward to the day I meet your wife as well. I bet she's equally impressive. But thank you
More
so much for
impressive, more impressive.
that was a great response. You almost were obligated to say that. Um, but we are lucky you came on here and even gave us an insight into your world because you don't have to. You don't know any of us anything, and you're actually kind of giving away your business as well. Because the more negligent our industry continues to be, the more money all these plaintiff attorneys make. So, guys, we're very lucky to have Michael with us. So, thank you very, very
Yeah.
much.
I see questions, like lots and lots of questions. Feel free. I can't promise I can answer everything, but I can
No,
try. I
do
like to be
not open that
responsive.
door, Michael. Don't do it. They have
But
me. They can ask me these nitty gritty questions.
all right, all right. Or we'll come back
That is a
again.
door you are going to open. You're going to wish you didn't. I promise you.
You're probably right. I'll listen to you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you very much. And anybody, I know that Zoom kicked out a ton of people. So we will repost this video for everybody to watch on YouTube and redistribute it as well. And so thank you for everything you do and for coming on here and giving us insight into your world.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Be well, be safe out there.
Take
Bye.
care.